All right, everybody. Welcome to another podcast episode, the SSD Podcast, meaning spend the same dollar twice, where we're talking about leverage. We're talking about putting things in perspective to help you get to that next level. But one of the things that I promised everybody is that we're not just going to talk about leverage from the financial aspect. We're going to be talking about, we're not going to just be talking about leverage from the infinite banking aspect. We're going to be talking about leverage from finances, spiritual, health, all kind of different ways that you can leverage to propel yourself into your future. And one of the mini series that we have inside of the SSD podcast is Everyday Heroes. And the reason why this is important is because we have people of the community that you can relate to that have success at their level, basically. But the thing is you can relate to their backgrounds. And the reason why this is important is because so often people see entertainers, athletes, whoever these people are, and they think that success is something far beyond their reach. Whereas there's people in the community every day that you could be talking to learn from and get information from. And so one of those people in the community is our guest, Rah Kalon. All right. So Rah, go ahead and say something to the people right quick and introduce yourself, please.
What is up, beautiful people? My name is Rah Kalon, she, they pronouns, and I am an emotional intelligence consultant. I am a lover of love. And whether you know it or not yet, I am your inner child's fairy godparent.
There you go. There you go. So the reason why this is exciting, y'all, is because I actually met Rah at, I guess you call it a personal development seminar. And then we connected and we were able to develop a relationship. But then afterwards, we were able to have a little bit more conversation, coming into the podcast where we could talk about business and see what she does for work and how that connects to the personal development. But more than anything else, before we talk about any of that, let's talk about your background. Let's talk about where you're from. Let's talk about how you came up. How did you come to be? Can you share that with us real quick?
Absolutely. So I was born by a river in a little tent. I'm just kidding. I was not born by a river in a little tent. So I was actually born at home. I come from a family who really leads with trust, listens to intuition. And there was a lot of stuff going on at hospitals at the time that I was born in 91. So my parents opted to have a home birth. So I grew up with a mindset of trust your gut, trust your intuition in ways that a lot of people don't get brought up to understand and to have faith in. So growing and maturing and evolving had a lot to do with opening up that throat chakra, doing a lot of communicating, creating of boundaries, advocating for true expression. I got my bachelor's in strategic communication because of that true appreciation for the need for direct, clear communication. And then got my master's in clinical counseling because I have a heart that loves to give and wants to teach other people how they can do that for themselves, do that with their relationships, whether it's familial, romantic, platonic. And after getting that master's in clinical counseling, I realized, especially for a desire to work with people of color, counseling was not the way to go about it. And so I realized we really needed emotional intelligence in our community. We really needed transformation, and there had to be an exchange between the person offering the information, having their own parameters and boundaries, but also being willing to share openly. And so that's what I represent. It's about you, but you'll get to know a little bit about me, so you feel free to share about you.
Interesting. So with that being said, you mentioned interesting duo. You mentioned, for lack of better terms, vulnerability, but then you still also have boundaries. Can you please explain how that's even possible? Because that sounds so much like an oxymoron. It's like those don't go together. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So we're talking about vulnerability and boundaries, right? Vulnerability is this individual's opportunity to express openly what exactly is coming to the surface in this moment, that's coming to the surface that I might need to process later. And that boundary comes in with that recognition that not all that processing needs to happen right here, right now in front of you. I do want to communicate and inform you that there is something going on in me so that you can respectfully give me space to do that. However, if I weren't to communicate that and I was just to stonewall you, that would hurt our connection. And it wouldn't lead you to trusting when I come back around to open back up to let me share more vulnerably. So having that vulnerability means being able to say, I'm not okay right now. But having that boundary also means being able to say, I'm going to take some time for myself and I'll follow up with you when I feel like talking more about it.
Mm, mm. I think that little piece right there could save a lot of unnecessary fights. I could tell you in my own journey. So communication, to your point, Raw, communication is much more than just relationships, family. That also relates in the business world.
Absolutely.
When you hear something or you're dealing with somebody that you feel it could be unmanageable or unbearable,
Mm-hmm.
your ability to create a boundary where you say, I'm gonna revisit this later,
Yeah.
that I can see the value in that, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Set an appointment. Don't put the pressure on yourself to have the conversation right now. Just let them know we will have it.
Yes, yes, yes. Awesome. You said a lot about your life in a very short amount of time. You said your parents had a home birth. You were taught to trust your gut, so you're naturally a communicator. And then you not only were you naturally a communicator, but you honed in on that talent and you developed that talent uh, via through your degrees and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that journey a little bit more specifically, please?
For sure. Higher education, especially as a person of color, can
Yeah.
be fickle because you're being sold a dream over get this degree, get this piece of paper, and
Mm-hmm.
then these doors of opportunity are just going to come wide open.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been a creative, so I really wanted to go to school for creative writing. I really wanted to go to school for something a little bit more razzle dazzle, but
Yeah.
observing the world around me, I was like, that ain't gonna pay the bills. How wrong could I have been? I just didn't realize where to really start trusting that gut again. But it was college days, so we weren't trusting the gut as much as we needed to.
Facts.
So we get the degree in strategic communication, which is really a marketing, PR, news degree, because we figure people are always interested in the news.
Mm-hmm.
And while we're getting that degree, we end up interviewing the director of the counseling program at our campus. And instead of it being a 45-minute interview, it's a 3-hour conversation. And she has me audit her class. And that completely changes my life and trajectory over education after that. So I finished the strategic communication degree, but I know throughout the last 2 semesters that I'm going to get my master's in counseling. And that's how I feel like divinity works. There's intervention right when you think that you're digging your heels in for something that will be okay for you, but not amazing. And then that amazingness still finds you.
So wait a minute. So you were interviewing the head of a department,
Mm-hmm.
and it was supposed to be 45 minutes to an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And then it lasted 3 hours because you just had an amazing conversation.
Yeah, we were just flowing and talking, and she loved the way that I asked questions, and she loved the interest I had in the why behind human behavior. She's like, these aren't just news questions, because the story was about the stress level of female students on campus, but the way that we were engaging, it went so much deeper than that. I didn't even get to put most of that content into the actual story I was writing, but she even gave me a textbook, like a $300 textbook, and was like, audit the class next semester. You already are caught up to speed. So it was very validating, that meeting.
There you go. That's all. That's amazing. Yeah. So how did that experience translate into your current career?
So she was a huge proponent over it. She's like, you have gifts. And there's nothing like in life when people are put in place to confirm for you that you have a specific talent, a specific gift, a calling. And so I've always been that person who people felt comfortable talking to, whether in line at a grocery store or you're getting an oil change and people in the room are just awkwardly there. And I start a conversation and we all leave as friends. So I have a way with people, which I've always been real blessed about. I am interested in the counseling program. I apply for the counseling program. And as any tale has, it has its ups and downs. I don't get in. And she's the director of the program, and she's heartbroken because while she does get to vote, there are people who have bachelor degrees in counseling, and there are a limited amount of spots, and there's not room for someone who doesn't have the bachelor's in counseling to come on in. So I have to wait a couple years before I actually get accepted into the program. And in that time, it gave me the opportunity to really think about, why do I want to pursue counseling and what makes me feel even more validated in these gifts? And life experience kept bringing me people who wanted to share and to open up with me and to talk with me. And I just really was hungry for more skills to be able to meet them where they were. I had innate skills, but I wanted to build on that. And so when 2015 came and the program opened back up and I applied, it was one of those moments over, I knew it was for me. So I wasn't worried about if I was going to get in. I was excited about what I was going to do with it when I got in, and I got in.
But you mentioned something that I think is very key that people should pay attention to. So there's a difference between talent, skills, and someone even mentioned attributes. We know talents is what you're born with, that the creator gifted you inside of you. You were born with this. Skills is something that you work on and develop, and attributes are the things that come out during dire situations, right? You are so unique. Most people do not work on their talents. However,
Mhm.
you did. Would you say that, what does that look like for somebody? Does that look like, does life become magically easier, or is there, what does that look like? Because we all hear about working on our skill,
Yes.
but we don't hear too many times people working on their talent. So tell us what that looked like for you. Like, how easy was it for you to work on that, or how difficult? What did that look like?
So I think working on our talents, or working on our gifts, as I might say, is the epitome of self-love, the epitome of self-awareness. If
Okay.
this is what I am,
Okay.
anyways, becoming familiar with it is only going to be to my benefit. And finding
Mm,
out how, in certain ways, it boosts me and is a catalyst forward, and how other ways it could be a crutch that my ego leans on and pulls me back. So I
mm,
need to become mindful of the power I have in me and how to wield it so that it cannot be used against me, so that I'm not manipulating other people with it, and I'm truly using it to serve the greatest good. So it looked like knowing that I have an amazing voice and getting into poetry and acting and public speaking so that I get more confident. Like, I have my Toastmaster series that I've participated in so that I can talk about anything with anybody.
mhm.
Working on talent looked like finding out, what was I uncomfortable being vulnerable about and talking about. Since everybody wants to talk to me about everything, what are the things that I get scared about mentioning, so that when someone is sharing with me in that way, my empathy can truly be very like polished, and no, I understand why you feel vulnerable. I know what that feels like. So the
Mhm.
more aware I got to become of me, the easier it was to see people as a mirror, and to not take their behavior, their choices, their words personally,
Mhm.
but really
Mhm.
to just be the observer of them, like I'm the observer of myself.
Yee, give me chills with this one. And the reason why I say that is because I can relate, in the sense of when you said that you wanted to be in creative writing, but then you were called to it, even though you made a decision based off of money.
Mm-hmm.
I did something similar. I did like business, but I majored in business because I was looking to make money to pay off my mom and dad's house.
Yep.
But my love was storytelling, animation, things of that nature.
Yeah.
And by the way, I never took a class in it, right? So when you're saying this, and you're saying that you want to, you diving into that field lets you know more about you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the epitome of self-love. It gives me chills just thinking about that, because even in my own journey, me getting called to still do storytelling, I didn't realize that you could do storytelling in business, but it came to be, and I realized everything is about stories anyway. So I
Every.
don't I don't want to steal from you, but I'm just saying what you're saying is resonating with me because I can relate to that story. What I'm receiving from Rah is that whatever path you take, that you're not alone, and the divine will speak to you.
Yeah.
And sometimes, even when you don't listen, the divine will speak to you so hard that it's almost like you get smacked in the face.
Yes. Yes. The divine is quick with the solid backhand. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm gathering. This is what I'm getting. This is what I'm receiving. So then, okay. So let's talk about that as far as emotional maturity, then, or what you call EQ,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Emotional
Um,
intelligence.
so how can someone use that practically to I guess you say faithfully go through their journey of life? We're speaking to the college student right now who
Mm,
doesn't know what they want to major in. They
yeah.
don't know what they want to do with their life. How can they use what you're talking about to move forward with their decision faithfully?
So the same way that you tied in how storytelling works everywhere is the
Mm-hmm.
same way that emotional intelligence is a must and is needed everywhere. In the
Mm-hmm.
classroom, in the boardroom, in the bedroom, everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a student and you know that you don't know what you don't know, this is a great opportunity to start to practice one of the segments of emotional intelligence, which is self-awareness, becoming objectively aware with what you think and how that impacts how you feel and how that impacts how you behave. And if you don't like how you're behaving, if you don't like what you're doing, follow the breadcrumb trail backward. Look at your behaviors and ask yourself, what was I thinking when I did that? And then ask yourself, well, what was I feeling when I thought that? And really get to the root of objectively, even aspects you are not a fan of, where is this coming from? And as you start to understand that, it will give you insight and knowledge far more than any class ever could over exactly what direction you really value taking. Now, you might still choose to make the decision based off of what you know. And that is a very logical decision-making choice, right? But there is something outside of logic sometimes that leads us further. There's something outside of ego and what you can understand that leads us greater. And before your prefrontal lobe fully develops, which doesn't happen till about 26, 27, so it might be a little early for you, you really are trying to just move in and feel like a competent, capable adult. But once your prefrontal lobe develops, and Hassani can speak to this, you realize you still don't know what's going on. You still don't know what's happening. But the only difference is you feel more confident in that because you've lived a couple more years and you know that whatever is happening, you can navigate it. You trust yourself more with that. So what I'm recommending is, instead of waiting for that trust to happen in your 30s, which it'll happen more naturally, start practicing self-trust now by listening to yourself actively, not just to the parts that you like, not to the parts only that your parents respond well to, but to the aspects of yourself that really truly ring and validate true parts of you. And then from there, build that self-trust.
So then, is there such thing as a bad decision?
It depends on what you're basing that off of. I think that there can be bad decisions if you are looking at them from the lens of only an outcome. Like if you were trying to get a specific outcome and you made this decision and it didn't get that outcome, you might logically say that was a bad decision. But that's based off the outcome you know of. There are so many outcomes bigger and grander than the one you were thinking of that you might have just set yourself up through that bad decision to be fully in line with. So I think there are a lot of detours in life, but I don't think you're ever off the path.
Ooh, okay. And that's why I asked that, because I know sometimes we're terrified of making a decision. You know, we as people terrified of making a decision because we don't want to make the wrong decision because we've been burned before, we've been hurt before, we've been taken advantage of before, and we feel it's because of a decision that we made, or a decision that we were tied to. So I once heard that there's no such thing as a bad decision, but bad decision management. Would you agree with that? What's your thoughts on that?
I like that statement. And when I think of the word management there, I think about how, so you make the decision and then it doesn't go the way you thought. How do you manage the emotions that come from that? Do you immediately beat yourself up? And is it the voice of your disappointed father that you hear ringing through your ears? Is it the facial expression your mom makes when she feels like you could have done better that starts showing up in the front of your eyes? Like, are you regressing to the past when you're managing that decision that you're not proud of? Or are you able to be present with the uncomfortable emotion and then still use the information you got from the bad decision to make better decisions that align with where you want to go? So the word management in that phrase is what really sticks out to me, because how are you managing yourself? Are you a tyrant and a dictator about it? Or are you a loving parent who gets you back on track?